You're listening to the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Cricket. Now that's the talking about yourself bit done, Nate. Let's get into this cricket discussion.
I talked about myself for 45 minutes. There you go.
Well, it was pretty interesting, pretty riveting stuff. But I chose some topics to talk about
Sure.
USA cricket. So let's start with the first one, Major League Cricket and Minor League Cricket, but which are the two main tournaments domestically in the US. And let's talk about Major League Cricket because that happened recently last month. And
Yes.
The US joined the T20 franchise league circuit with Major League Cricket. It was a short tournament. It only went for a few weeks, 13th of July to the 30th. There were only 15 matches in the group stage, with each team playing 5 matches each. There's 6 teams, of course: LA Knight Riders, San Francisco Unicorns, Mumbai Indians, New York, Seattle Orcas, Washington Freedom, Texas Super Kings. And matches were played at 2 venues, in Dallas and Texas, and Morrisville and North Carolina.
Yep.
So only 2 venues were used. And as we mentioned, that some of the IPL franchises invested into Major League Cricket with the teams, some of the teams. And also in Australia, New South Wales and Cricket Victoria had partnership deals with the Washington Freedom, which was New South Wales, and San Francisco with Victoria.
Yep.
And so that was good. They're helping out and Major League Cricket. And some of the world's best T20 players played. Trent Boult, Rashid Khan, Faf du Plessis, captain the Super Kings. Nicholas Pooran, who played a pretty good innings in the final.
Amazing.
Andre Russell,
Yep.
just to name a few.
Yes.
And we saw some of the games were really close, Nate, and others were a bit one-sided, but that's what you get in T20 cricket on that occasion.
It's true.
Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
And the final was pretty exciting as well, wasn't it? With New York winning in the end by 7 wickets, and Pooran top scoring with 137 not out in the run chase, and they won with basically 4 overs to spare, really.
Yeah.
And the organisers were pretty optimistic. The crowd figures were pretty good. Major League have plans for a 34,000-seater stadium. I was just reading in New York that they want to get up and hopefully be one of the venues for the T20 World Cup next year, but it's just waiting for approval by the ICC for inspection. There's been lots of positive feedback from the players on the tournament. So Nate, what's your assessment on the first season of Major League Cricket, because you were there covering it?
Right.
And do you see any improvements for season 2 and beyond?
Yes. Okay. So first of all, it was very successful. Before the league started, I had one way. It was so successful that I had to change my way of deciding if it was how it was successful. Like going in, I'd settled on a few criteria about how I was going to determine whether it was a success for the first year. And by the end of it, that criteria that I had kind of settled upon was laughably just destroyed. It was it was so far exceeded that it was silly in retrospect that was even my gauge. That's how good it was, and I was expecting it to be good. So it's hard for me to convey just how good it was, but it raised the standards around the US so quickly. I mean, that venue in Dallas alone raised the standard in the US immensely. It's already the best venue in the USA by some distance. Now,
just sorry to interrupt you there. Wasn't it a former baseball stadium, was it?
It was. It used to be a minor league baseball stadium, and now the interesting thing is here, I don't think a lot of people overseas who don't go to sports events in the USA, I don't think a lot of people will appreciate how good a good minor league baseball stadium is. A good minor league venue is a very nice venue. And so this was a good minor league venue. It actually won some awards when it first opened. A good minor league baseball venue. It won some awards when it first opened. But they basically redid the whole thing. They tore out because you have to. The sight lines are different. Everything's different. It has to be redesigned for cricket, and this
It
is
has to be circular, not a diamond. So
yeah, right. It has to be the seats have to be oriented to the middle instead of to this extreme end, which they are in baseball. In baseball, all the seats point to the pitcher's mound, and in cricket they have to point to the middle. So they took the whole lower bowl out, and they put new seats in. And this is so important this is why I'm always worried when people say, oh, well, they converted a baseball stadium. Yeah, but they rebuilt a baseball stadium into a cricket stadium. They made, there's a big distinction, and you have to do it this way if you're going to do it. So they rebuilt the stands, and they did a great job. I gotta say, like Peter Della Penna was there beforehand, reporting from there on Twitter, saying that people were still screwing the last, the seats.
Yeah, I did see that, putting the seats in and the finishing touches. Yeah.
Yes.
We've got a tight deadline here, so
yeah.
Gotta get the speed on.
And I'll tell you what, I love minor league baseball, and I love minor league baseball stadiums. I love baseball. I love sports stadiums in general. And you're probably the same way.
Yeah. So in the cricket world, yes.
Yeah. So there's just something about a ballpark. And so I used to go to a lot of minor league games. And I remember there's this league called the Atlantic League, which I really like, which is a unaffiliated minor league. So they don't have any ownership by Major League at all. They're totally independent. And but the quality is really good. They get a lot of major leaguers who they might be 35, 36 years old and sent down into the minor leagues and then released, and then they'll go to this league. So they get good players. But the Atlantic League always there was this time in like the late 2000s and early 2010s where their teams, like, it's almost like every year a new stadium opened up. And I would go to all of those, like, as many as I could. Like, sometimes the first game, I was like, I gotta go see this venue.
Yeah.
And it was great because I lived in Maryland at the time, and this place, all these venues were Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, within a couple hours drive. So and when I would go to these, sometimes on opening day, the facade on the outside wasn't finished. You would, none of the little touchings, the finishing touches were done. Yeah. And there were areas that were like roped off, they couldn't fully open the stadium. So I'm used to seeing that. And I thought, this is what I was expecting when I went to Major League. I was expecting, okay, look, it's not the end of the world if the facade's not finished. It's not the end of the world if, all the little fancy touches aren't finished.
Yeah. Yeah.
But honestly, it would look like the place had been done for two months at least. It looked like it had been finished forever. You would have never guessed that they had screwed the last seat in probably 5 minutes before the first person walked in. Yeah, it was. You would have never guessed it. And when I say it's a good minor league baseball, it's the equivalent of a good minor league baseball venue. That's a massive compliment to a sporting venue. And where it's different. Where it blew me away, this is where it really blew me away, is I was expecting a minor league baseball atmosphere, and which is fun. You go to a minor league baseball atmosphere, it's laid back, it's fun. You sit there, you really go for the conversation. You go for the fellowship with your friends. And this was not that at all. This was, every game felt almost like a playoff game. Like it was every game. The fans were hanging on every ball. They were cheering when something good would happen, for every boundary. They were cheering for every wicket, and they were in the game and they're waving flags. Of course, they gave flags to the fans. But the intensity of the crowd blew away any minor league baseball experience I have had. And it made it feel like a major league baseball experience at a smaller venue in the playoffs. So it was like, that's what it felt like. Almost every game felt like it felt like it was important. And of course, it's a five games per team regular season. Every game was important, but the buy-in from the fan fans was tremendous. And that, to me, was like, I saw that, I was like, this place could add another 3,000, 4,000 seats and they'd have no problem selling out. It felt like it just felt so good to see it work, in person. And Yeah, that was to me the biggest thing. If it's a destination for people, if it's something that people have to go see, then it's hard to replace that. Yes, of course, the television money is where your bread's buttered, and
Yeah.
but the atmosphere helps create that demand for the television money.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. Were there like average American
Yeah.
fans, people who were baseball fans that were born and raised in America,
Yes,
that came to the games, were they?
there were. I would say it was at least 85 to 90% South Asian or Caribbean. There were a lot of Trinidadians there. There were a lot of people from Trinidad and Tobago. There were a lot of people, obviously, from Chennai Super Kings have a massive fan base. So the TSK, the Texas Super Kings team, instantly was the fan favorite. But that was cool to see, because the fact that there's, Grand Prairie itself has it's a smaller town, and it's right next to Dallas. It's right between Dallas and Arlington. So you have Dallas, which is the big city that everyone knows about. You have Arlington, which is where all that big city's teams, professional teams, play in Arlington. That's where their stadiums are. And right in between the two, you have Grand Prairie. So it's a town that definitely wants to put itself on the map. They're proud of them. They're proud. It's Texas, They're
Yeah.
so they, it's important that it's called Grand Prairie Stadium, because the town put their neck out for this place. And so you have to, I was a little unfortunate that on the broadcast they talked about how this was happening in Dallas and how the other leg was happening in Morrisville. They didn't say Raleigh or Durham, which are the two bigger cities that Morrisville's sandwiched in between. They didn't say that.
Yeah.
They said Morrisville. So it was a little disappointing that Grand Prairie didn't get its name out there as much as Morrisville did. But Grand Prairie deserves all of the praise for this, not Dallas. So that was an interesting distinction, and it's important to make that distinction. But yes, the Grand Prairie fans, the fans from that area, who weren't familiar with cricket, there were plenty of them there. There weren't a ton, but there were more than I expected, and they were curious, and they had investigated cricket, and some of them had been in it already for a couple of years, but some of them were brand new, and they're like, "Whoa, this is our team. This is our team, the Texas team. I want to come see our team, and they're playing here in Grand Prairie, so I got to go see them." And that's great. That's really cool. And you hope that the franchise can make that connection even deeper. And it's tough to do that in a short season league, but that's the biggest obstacle that I think they'll face.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great to hear that people who are not familiar with cricket liked it, were curious, they wanted to learn more about it.
Yeah,
it's something different, something different, and probably relatable to baseball in some sort of way.
Sure, yes.
So that's why they made that connections. The improvements, do you see them improving the season, lengthening it? People talked about that. They also talked about some of the names of the teams that they think could be changed. Do you think any changes will be made for season 2 of Major League Cricket?
Yeah, but I don't think it'll be the team names. You're not going to tell the Mumbai Indians what to call their team. They're going to do what they're going to do, right? And each of these franchises had their own strengths and their own weaknesses, as of course they're going to. And it was neat to see that. It was neat to see that playing out. But I think some of the things they'll do is, a lot of people were very frustrated that they didn't really address watching the broadcast. It felt like, to a lot of people, and to me too, and this wasn't necessarily the commentator's fault. You could tell it just wasn't. That wasn't the mission. It was as if they were talking to fans in another country about this curious thing that's happening in the USA, instead of we're talking to American sports fans, or we're talking to
and trying to educate them on cricket.
Yeah, there wasn't any of that. So and like I said, it's not the commentator's fault. That's not the script that they were given. Basically, that's not the orders that they were given. So and most of the viewers, I think 90% of the viewers, were abroad. We're not in the USA.
Yeah.
So that's, but you want to get eyes on the sport. You need to get eyes on the sport right away. And so the mission was, let's get some of these IPL teams with their brand that exists to come in. They're going to play their brand name players, the players that are associated with their brand. They're going to play them. And everyone else is going to have to work around that on that team, which was a struggle at first, for those teams. But that was their job. That was the IPL team's job, was to bring eyes. And next year they will absolutely do a better job of trying to bring in new fans and trying to appeal to the new American cricket fans. The next wave of American cricket fans. They're gonna do that. I believe they really will. Now, if they don't, they've really missed the mark. But I think they will.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they can do that. From what I saw was pretty promising. It was pretty good. It was just a game of cricket, as you would expect, T20 cricket.
Yeah.
Quality of cricket was good. Okay, it was lacking in some areas a little bit, but that's the whole learning curve for some of these players who are coming through the American system. It's a learning curve for them. Learn with the best players in the world, like a Rashid Khan, like a Trent Bolt, like a Quentin de Kock. How do they go about their batting and bowling?
Right.
So it's a great learning opportunity for everyone. And obviously, whenever you start a new league, you're going to have teething problems. So,
sure.
So hopefully they can improve it next season. But hopefully.
I think so. Yeah, I think that they will. And there are people in this country who are getting into cricket. Gabe and Nick. Yeah. I got to meet Gabe at one of the games, which was cool because we text here and there. Yeah. I wanted to meet Nick too, but he couldn't make it. And then of course we got John Boy, who's introducing John Boy Media, who are introducing a lot of Americans to cricket. Look at their video, Cricket Explained for Baseball Fans, and that video has almost 1 million views, and guarantee you 75 to 90% of those are Americans, who probably never heard of cricket or never knew what cricket was, and now they're closer to knowing what it is. And that's humongous. You just get a few thousand Americans into it the first year, then you double that the next year, and you double that, and all of a sudden 4 or 5 years in, and when I say Americans, obviously this can be a controversial thing to say, because surely expats are Americans too, but what I mean by that is non-cricket fans, basically. You get a few thousand the first year or the next year, and then it's going to snowball. And especially if, like I said, that Atlantic League in baseball, they got so much momentum because it was definitely a golden age for them, because every year they seem to be opening a new stadium. And that's what's going to happen in Major League Cricket is, of course, next year we have the World Cup, and if that venue can get built with that humongous temporary venue, which I kind of will believe that when I see it, but if that can get built in New York, all of a sudden now Major League Cricket happens in New York years before it should have, because it takes so long to build a venue in New York. It takes forever, and to find the place to do it is the hardest thing, and to afford it's so expensive. So if they can pull that off next year, huge. And then the next year open a new stadium in the LA area, and then the next year San Francisco opens up, and then the next year Washington opens up. If you can do this, stagger these, it'll actually work out in the benefit of the league quite a bit, because you'll energize each of these cities one at a time, and that will carry them through any early lulls in the league. And once they get to a certain tipping point, it's all automatic.
Absolutely. And those are the benefits, tourism, people come in, spend money, good for the economy. In their town or city, and region. So there's massive upsides to Major League Cricket. So hopefully, I think everyone around the world wishes it to succeed. And hopefully Americans to embrace cricket. So let's talk about minor league cricket, because that's the other comp. That's the one below.
Yes.
Because you have that in American sports, Major League Baseball, minor league baseball. So different divisions, different levels. Yes. But minor league cricket, it's back for its third season this year, and it just started, I believe, August the 4th until the 17th of September for regular season.
Yeah, and then the playoffs end the first weekend. Yeah, the first weekend of October is when the playoffs will end. Yes, and those playoffs will be in Dallas at that new venue. Usually, the finals weekend happens here in Morrisville, and we do a great job of getting like the fans here come out in force from final weekend. Yeah,
there's over 150 matches across 7 weeks in the regular season, plus the playoffs for 2 weeks there, and then you have 26 teams nationwide. 17 venues. You're going to have some games at the Grand Prairie Stadium, 19, I think I read on the website. And the competition is the key pathway into Major League Cricket for some of these players. And what I liked is that all the matches are free to attend. You can just rock up and watch a game of cricket, and you can also watch it on the YouTube channel for the streams as well, which is great, accessible for all. So Nate, tell us about more about minor league cricket. What's it about? The teams, the competition, the players, etc.
Yeah, minor league cricket is kind of my specialty because I do a weekly show during this minor league cricket season called the Minor League Cricket Show, and I've been doing this. This is my third year doing this, and actually, as soon as we end this meeting, I'll resume my editing of my weekly video. but yes, so that is, there's 4 divisions. So they're basically so first of all, there's 2 conferences. There's the Atlantic Conference, which is on the east side of the country, and then there's the Pacific Conference, which is on the west side of the country. Each of these conferences has 2 divisions. Now the divisions are not they're not like a hierarchy. They're not like different levels. They're the same level. It's just dividing up the nation because we have such a massive country that so the East is basically the Northeast. It's basically everything north of Washington D.C. In the East, and the South is everything south of Washington D.C. basically in the East. Then there's the Central, which this is an interesting thing. The Central is like that entire column from Texas all the way up to Chicago and Michigan. And then you have the West, which is the entire West Coast. So that goes all the way from Los Angeles all the way up to Seattle. And each of these divisions produces a certain number of playoff teams. I can't remember it's a shame. I can't remember how many there are this year, but typically there's 2 playoff teams from each division that go to the playoffs. This year there'll be more. And typically this is a 10-week league. It's not 7. So this is a shortened version because there was some issues with sanctioning, and USA Cricket was some difficulties with USA Cricket. Otherwise, we would have had a first half before Major League, and then had Major League, and then I had a second half. But anyhow, differently from minor league baseball, once you get promoted to Major League Baseball from minor league, you don't go back down and play in minor league again unless you do poorly and they send you back down. With Major League and minor league cricket, they're not parallel with each other, so they're not running it together. So our minor league cricket is really kind of like our county cricket in a way, but it's for T20.
Yeah.
So, and then our Major League Cricket is kind of like our 100, but it's not the 100 format. But you know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's our showcase league. So our minor league, all the major leaguers except for one play in minor league cricket. The one that doesn't is Cameron Gannon, who obviously plays in Australia, but he is a domestic based on the fact that he qualifies for USA by birth. So, the other 59 Major League Cricket domestic players play in minor league cricket for their team, and some of the teams have multiple major leaguers on the team, and some of them don't have any. So that's the trick is right now, because we have this constantly changing landscape of cricket in the USA, and right now the hot place to be is Texas because of that new venue, and so Dallas is the place to be for Texas right now, the Dallas area, the Dallas suburban area. And so we have 2 Dallas teams. One of them has 8 major league cricketers on it, which is spoils for sure. And especially when you consider this, you have to have 2 U21 players on your team in your playing 11, and you can have 1 overseas. So that can be anybody in the world. So this team in Dallas has 8 major league players, 2 U21 players, and 1 overseas player. And that's like, this team is ridiculously good, as good as you can get. Yeah, and then you'll have other teams that just don't have any. We have 1 on the team that I do commentary for right now. We have 1. We had 3 last year, but those players, every year there's a lot of movement. It's like it's more movement than the NBA, because these owners don't have a lot of patience. They want to win right away, so they'll offer players more money, and it's just a bidding war to get these players to come and play for their teams. And that's not a bad thing for the players.
Yeah, they have to try and make a living as well.
Yeah.
You play cricket, but you have to have some remediation.
Yes.
Money and contracts and that. So that's understandable.
Yeah.
As every player does in any sport, but in cricket as well, especially if you're playing at that sort of level, domestic level, you need to have some sort of payment there.
Yes.
So that was good to hear about that. Has that attracted many fans as well? Minor league cricket, have you seen big crowds at games?
It depends on the ownership group for each team. Now, this is one area where most of the teams do very, very poorly, because they don't really care, because they're kind of continuing. It's really hard to change the culture of what existed before. When these guys who are the owners of the teams in minor league cricket are used to a calendar full of weekend tournaments where they pay the best players they can to play in a tournament that's been popped up someplace in hopes that they can get a trophy. And they don't care if anyone comes to these games. This is money that they're just throwing away. But a lot of times, they just like being around good cricketers, and they got a lot of money. But in minor league, we do have a couple of teams that go out of their way to communicate and to make connections with their community. The Philadelphians are the best team at this, and they're named the Philadelphians in homage to the greatest cricket team in the history of America, which was the gentlemen of Philadelphia who actually beat Australia at one point in time. So that incredibly good historic American cricket team, which at one time I think was the 4th best team in the world, something like that. It was like the other 3 were international teams, but yeah. So they in homage to that they've named themselves the Philadelphians, and there's a lot of history in Philadelphia, and some of these owners are very knowledgeable about that history, and so that's where Liam Plunkett plays his minor league cricket, and they do a great job of trying to get fans to come out. They need a venue really badly. They need their own venue, and they're working towards that. But I was out there last year. I was very, very happy to be invited to go out up to one of their weekends, and they had over 1,000 fans out there watching a couple of their games. And unfortunately, they lost. But the fans, this was the amazing thing. Okay, so I've said before that in Morrisville, we it's not unusual for us to get 2,000 fans for like a minor league final. That's a big game, right? For a regular season Saturday night game, if we get 1,000, 1,100, that's really, 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 really good. Typically it's going to be about 5 to 800, which is still great. Yeah. But they got 1,000 people out there, and half of them were not the typical faces you're going to see at cricket games in the USA. It was walking around. It was like, how long? I would ask people, and it's really weird to feel like you're stereotyping white people when you're a white person. You know what I mean? But it would be like, if you're at a game here in Philadelphia, right? You're Australian, right? And I come up to you and I'm like, hey, how long have you been into cricket? You might be a little offended by that, because I'm assuming you don't know what you're doing, right? And here you are, an Australian in the USA who knows a ton about cricket. And here I am, this goofy redheaded guy that comes up to you and asks you if you've ever heard of cricket before. That might be offensive to you. And so I mean, but I'm still going to go around and ask people their story. And
Yeah.
there I was asking people, and some of them were like, "Oh yeah, I heard we had a cricket team, and I just wanted to learn about it. So I watched these videos and you know Googled it, and then I decided to come. And so yeah, they're the best at it. The Philadelphians, by far, they're the best at it.
Yes. That's pretty interesting to hear. Hi everyone, hope you enjoyed hearing Nate and I discuss Major League Cricket and Minor League Cricket. Make sure you check out Emerging Cricket and Big Innings and support Nate in the good work he is doing in promoting cricket in the USA. Links to those are in the description of this episode.